You're now listening to the Fullerton Unfiltered podcast. Straightforward, no nonsense business advice. Completely unfiltered. Grow your business. Grow your life. Now, here's your host, Brian Fullerton.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Fullerton Unfiltered podcast. Thanks so much for joining in, guys. I have a special guest on this phone call and this podcast, and that is a good friend of mine, Jon Grossman with FuelCred. Jon, what's going on, brother? How you doing?
Good. How's everything with you?
Doing good, man. Doing good. Just ready to get the season going and ready to get out there, start making some money. But in the meantime, actually taking care of all of our taxes and doing a bunch of stuff on the back end to make sure that we had a more successful 2019 and line up everything for 2020. So, it's exciting times for sure. So you and I actually got to befriend each other over the last about 3 months or so. And we actually created some sponsored content for YouTube talking about FuelCred, which we're going to get into in a little bit. But right now, you wanted to make yourself available to my audience and the community because you actually had a background in being a CPA, huge background in accounting. So I said, hey, can I pick your brain on a podcast? Because I get a lot of these questions about bookkeeping, accounting, receipts, and finances, right? So let's do this. Before we jump into it, why don't you give everybody maybe like a 30 or 60 second kind of background on you so they know where you're coming from, and then we'll get into some pretty exciting topics on this episode.
Yeah, no, and again, thanks for having me. So, Jonathan Grossman, I have a little bit of an interesting career path. The first 25 years of my life, I grew up on a family flower farm in South Jersey, which is, when people think of New Jersey, they think of the Jersey Shore and, being close to New York. But, half of the state is actually farms. Mm-hmm. So I actually grew up in part of the state that was a bunch of farms and I was one of 6 children there. So I grew up on a farm, not in a city. I went to, college and I majored in accounting and then I became a CPA. So I worked at EY for about 5 years doing corporate taxes. And, kind of at that point, I wanted to try something else. And, I always had a passion for small businesses. So I decided why not kind of create my own small business?
Yeah. No, this is really, really cool. Well, so I'm selfishly really excited because you're one of the first people that we get to have on the podcast talking about bookkeeping and CPA finances. And it's an incredibly important part that is absolutely never talked about on YouTube, in the lawn and landscape community that I see. I've actually publicly avoided this topic on YouTube because once you kind of open up Pandora's box, everybody's got an opinion. Mm-hmm. There's so many different strategies and philosophies. And so I've actually chosen by design to just talk about lawn maintenance and mowing grass and how to lay stripes, right? Like a little bit more topical, a little bit more surface level stuff. But while I got you, since we did the sponsored content with FuelCred, I was like, hey, part of the deal, I'm like, yo, you got to make yourself available to my audience on the podcast, though, right? So you and I were having a fun conversation. So if you guys ever wanted to talk about, small business ownership with DIY taxes versus when should you get a CPA, what do we do with our receipts? Like, do we just throw them in a shoebox, right? Like, I know you were chuckling before we hit record. You're like, probably not the best strategy. But we all start somewhere, right? So we're going to just do a quick episode here, maybe about half hour, 45 minutes, give some good just suggestions and advice. And of course, we want to talk about FuelCred, which is a great way to save money on your off-road use fuel. So it's going to be a pretty exciting episode. So let's do this. Before we go down the rabbit hole, let's hear from the announcements and we'll jump right back into things.
Boom! Are you looking to be more efficient, effective, safe, and profitable out in the field? Ballard Products has a full line of innovative products to help you in your everyday operations. From mower gear, trailer gear, backpack sprayers, equipment racks and storage, safety gear and equipment servicing products, and much, much more. We're sure you'll find something you can't live without. With over 30 years in the lawn care industry and 20 years selling great products, we're confident these products will meet the use and abuse of the everyday lawn pro. Jump on ballard-inc.com to check out the full line of gear, and be sure to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube as well. Keep grinding and be safe out there, friends.
All right, so Jon, I got just a really simple question. Like, when we start our business, well, let me ask you this. You've seen this so many times with all of your clients, right? You were joking about this before we hit record. That guys like me, the guys that run a lawn landscape business or any business, right? Pick a pressure washing guy, a brick paver guy. We get started in the business that we're usually in because we're passionate about the work. Right? Like I love cutting grass. I love seeing my customers light up to a freshly installed landscaping bed with mulch and the whole deal. Right? What I did not know, and you're probably going to laugh at this, and you already know where I'm going with this, is that I didn't know that I'm actually running a real business. Like there's so many things on the back.
Yeah.
I know it sounds really weird and funny, but I got paperwork. Now I've got payroll. Now I've got bookkeepers. Now I've got a CPA and accounting. And it's like, I didn't get started for all that. And in fact, I've actually became more of like what they call like a front of the house person, you know? But you with your background, you got to work with small business owners and farmers, guys like me that, you know, have a passion for the work they do, but maybe not the back end of the business. Is that something that you typically see, that people start their own business, they forget that they got to manage all this business and stuff on the back end with their accounting and financing?
Yeah, you know, you see it a lot in smaller businesses. You know, you kind of just said it yourself. I mean, as a small business, you're doing everything, right? You're doing sales, marketing, BD, the operations, and also the finance, right? That's kind of the nature of a startup and starting a new business. But, you know, as you grow, you know, whether you're a freelancer or you're a billion-dollar company, and this kind of gets into, you know, you really need a proper bookkeeping technique. Now, whether you're using, you know, QuickBooks or you're using a CPA or some sort of online service, that's really the framework or that's where you really have to start with your business, your books and records, because it not only goes into, you know, your finances, but, you know, you can look at those numbers from an operational standpoint, and they can help you make decisions for sales as well. So really the book, you know, starting from bookkeeping, that is probably the most important thing for any small business.
Right. Well, you know, on my podcast, a lot I talk about know your numbers. Well, this is the part we're talking about, which is knowing your numbers, because, dude, what you just said was huge. Like knowing your actual operating expenses, your overhead, your profit margin. If I said right now to somebody, hey, like what are you going to make this year? And they go, well, I'm going to make $180,000. And I'm like, okay, is that gross? Is that net? Is that adjusted this, adjusted that? And it's almost like you talk a different language, you know?
Yep.
Can I ask you a question about, like, what does the word financial IQ mean to you? Because I heard that about a decade ago, and my financial IQ was 0. But there's a different language out there in business and finance. Can you speak to that? Like any things that you want to add or relate to that kind of a conversation?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think, you know, as a small business, you know, you need some sort of, you know, financial IQ, right? But really the you know, the day-to-day aspects, and that's what's great about, you kind of mentioned it before, you know, if you're in the landscaping business, you're a farmer, right? You got into that business to be a landscaper, be a farmer, right? You're not going to be in the books every day and doing it. So, right, there's obviously, as a small business, you need some sort of financial IQ. But that could just mean, you know, looking at your profit and loss and balance sheet or cost of goods sold every month, right? It doesn't mean you need to be in the books every day. And that's really what's so important about hiring a bookkeeper. You know, I can kind of go into the different spectrum of services out there, because what's great about, as you know, as the years go on, you know, traditionally bookkeeping was, you know, let me go hire my local bookkeeper in town. And that's still a great option. But because of technology and just a lot of other players getting into the market, it actually, you know, for businesses like yourself and me as well, you know, it creates more competition, which lowers the price for bookkeeping services. So there's a lot of what I would call online bookkeeping services that does the same aspect of a local bookkeeper, but they're way more competitive on pricing. And it doesn't require, you know, you mentioned it before, that shoebox. You know, I'm putting all my receipts in the shoebox. You know, a lot of these solutions, you know, they connect to your business credit card and they automatically, what they call, reconcile everything in real time. So, you know, you could go, instead of calling your bookkeeper and say, hey, can I get my profit and loss statement for, you know, the month end, right? You can log on to an online platform and actually pull the data in real time. So if you're going to a bank, right, if you need a loan, right, they're going to want to see some books and records, you know, and also your tax return as well. But, you know, they might want to look at your books and records. So having that stuff updated in real time, you it could help you not only for tax season, but
Right.
also, from, getting loans from a bank, or, if you wanted to expand your business, or if you wanted to sell it as well.
Sure, sure. Well, dude, that's such a good perspective because it's funny. I have our local bookkeeper. Never met them before, to be honest with you. We send our receipts in the mail in an envelope, and they reconcile online. I talked to my girl Erica, who's assigned to me from a small business by me, and and then usually she always follows up with emails with AMAs. I think it's Ask My Accountant or whatever. And I'm so bad. Like, she gives me like 10 or 30 of them, and she's like, "What's this, and I'm like, I don't even know. Let me think. Let me look. So the first year with them was a little rough, but now we've got a system down. But it's incredibly important to have your books in a row, just from a business operating standpoint, like legally, like if you want to file taxes under a certain way, you might be an LLC filing as a subchapter S, right? Like there's certain ways that your business has to quote unquote behave, and having good books and a bookkeeper and an accountant, like these are prerequisites. Now, in the beginning, I was totally the shoebox guy, John. Like, I have no problem admitting it, but I'm also embarrassed because what I did is I put all my receipts in a shoebox, and I paid estimated quarterlies, right? And you can correct me if I'm wrong on this one, but from what I understand is that if you usually owe about $3,000 or more in federal, and again, this is not CPA advice or accounting advice, so a little asterisk here. So neither of us are on the line. But what I've noticed is that if you owe about $3,000 or more in federal taxes, you probably want to start as a small business paying in quarterly. So of course, get a CPA to help you out with all this stuff. But I'll just be honest with you. You know what? It really, if I put it all under an umbrella, John, like how it worked for me is that I was playing all my finances on defense. Like I was like basically we would finish out a year. I would take, well, here's my gross sales. Here's all my receipts. Here's what I got left. Here's what I paid and estimated. And it was kind of like Las Vegas, just rolling the dice, and if my CPA like said, hey, you get back $1,000 or you owe $1,000, like I was totally happy. And there was no tax strategy. There was no wealth strategy, Now with my CPA, like we have a monthly coaching call, and like the analogy of like the gyrosphere and the airplane, and if it leaves LA and it goes to New York, and if it's off 1 degree, you're going to wind up in Greenland or whatever, Iceland, I don't know, whatever, it's like the same thing. So you have to hire these professionals to help you grow your business. Let me ask you a question. When is it good? What's a good phase or good period to actually start hiring a professional versus just, using TurboTax or, I looked at QuickBooks, and I get QuickBooks like topically, but dude, I'm not a bookkeeper. I'm not an accountant.
Yeah.
I look at QuickBooks and it's still like looking at Fibonacci numbers, So I enlisted professionals. I built my team to help me run my business on the back end, because you can only spin so many plates on your own, right? So
definitely.
When's I don't know. Hopefully this question is making sense, but when's a good time to enlist like these professional services? Is there like a revenue amount
definitely.
or whatever? Any ideas on that one?
Yeah. I don't think there's necessarily a revenue amount. I think for most small businesses, they're definitely going to probably do, what they call DIY, right? Do it yourself taxes. And that's totally understandable. You're starting your business out and you're trying to save money. That makes a lot of sense, but as you grow and you progress your company and you're making more revenue, and you're not just the revenue aspect, right? You're starting to hire employees, you're starting to operate in different states, right? There's a lot of other stuff going on, from a tax perspective, and it's important to find a CPA that can help you with this. And you mentioned it before, and that was a great analogy. When you're first starting your business, you're playing, defense, let me just make sure I don't owe any taxes and whatnot. But what's great about, being finding a qualified CPA is they can actually help you reduce your taxes, being proactive, right? Because there's stuff you're doing throughout the year that, maybe if you structure the transaction this way, or maybe, if you take a loan from this one and you pay a certain amount down, right? From a tax perspective, you're actually going to owe less money at the end of the year. Taxes are, it's there's a saying, right? There's two things in life that's guaranteed, and that's death and taxes, right? And I think if you can be proactive about the tax angle of it, and like you said, I don't think, it's maybe it's just a monthly call or half a year call checking in, but having those real time books so your CPA could go in there and say, hey, I just saw you had a great year, this is going to require you to pay more in estimated taxes, so you don't have to, have a huge bill at the end of the year, right? So that's one thing. Well, but, to go back to figuring out, when do I need a CPA? As you progress as a business, there's different ways you can look at it, but I like to highlight a couple different scenarios, and I kind of mentioned them before. But really, when you start to hire, or you're planning to hire an employee or an independent contractor, you probably want to start thinking about a CPA. For employees, right now you're getting into remitting, payroll. That's a big thing as well. And then for independent contractors, right, those 1099s have to be sent out.
Yep.
Another thing is if you're operating across state lines, that's actually a big area. And now, depending where you are in the country, that might not be an issue. But think about in the Northeast, you have New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, Connecticut. They're only like maybe a couple hundred miles apart, right? You could be doing business, especially if you're a hardscaper and you're doing these big projects. That represents different tax liabilities in different states, and you'll have to make payments on them, right? So it's important to understand what your tax liability from a state perspective too. So obviously, if you're operating in different states, that's a big thing. For your employees too, if you wanted to open up a retirement account, which I think I'm just getting new into this market and learning more and more. I actually see a fair amount of people doing something like this, right, as an incentive to their employees, right? Whether it's a 401k plan or an employee benefit plan. I see that a lot more and more. And if you're doing that, you're definitely going to want to have a CPA, because there are tax implications to help you out. If you're going to give your employee 3% match, right, you can actually take a tax deduction for that. And it's really the way you structure a plan like that. So it's important to get a CPA to talk about it as well. You mentioned it before, from a corporate entity structure, we probably won't go more into what are the benefits of pros and cons. Right. That is in the CPA's wheelhouse. So whether you're a sole proprietor, a partnership, some of the larger ones are an S corp, which represents this whole different tax structure, and there's benefits to it, right? But it's sitting down with a CPA and figuring out, well, what is the best way for me, and some of it is a legacy thing too. The way you structure a business can impact how you might want to pass something down to your family.
Totally.
That is a big thing. What they call the inheritance tax. I mean, it's a huge thing from a federal and state perspective. So, getting a CPA to help with that is important. And then the last two ones is kind of goes back to revenue. Well, one is if you have a huge tax liability versus prior years, you definitely want to get somebody. So if you're going from $50,000 in revenue and you went up to like $350,000, you're definitely going to want a CPA, because now you're in different tax brackets. Some stuff, not to get too technical, but some stuff, gets phased out, so you don't have to pay certain taxes.
Right.
There's just benefits in different tax brackets. So it's important, as you grow your business, especially from a revenue perspective, get somebody to look at your numbers. And the last one is, if you haven't filed your taxes, I'm talking from a CPA perspective here, but if you haven't filed your taxes in prior years, you definitely want to get a CPA on board, because they can help you kind of navigate the IRS, right? Because now you're going to have penalties and everything. And of course, nobody should not file their taxes. But, if something happened and you didn't, it's always great to get a CPA on board to help you, get those what they call back taxes, remitted to the IRS, and then, help you going forward. So those are kind of the, 6 or 7 items. But it really depends on the business as well. I mean, those are probably some big ones, but, it could really just depend on your business operations. So,
no, dude, I mean, everything you just said, pure money, pure gold. Like if I would encourage people to listen to this episode once or twice, because there's going to be so many tips like weaved into this conversation that might not make sense your first year in business, but maybe in year 3 or year 5 or year 10, Jon, an oldie but a goodie that I heard was there's a difference between tax evasion and tax avoidance. And
it's true.
Evasion, we are not endorsing that, condoning that, or endorsing that. That is definitely something that you want to not dabble in or participate in. But avoidance, there's I forget the founding father that said, but there's no penalty basically in so ordering your affairs to pay the littlest amount of taxes. So that's like, you're like, well, I pay my fair share. Well, God bless you. Like, I'm going to pay my fair share too, after I take every single deduction, credit, tax strategy, wealth strategy. Like, so if taxes are are not your strong suit, dude, they weren't mine either. In fact, the last 24 months, I have been going through the crucible behind the scenes to to have all these conversations because my business is growing phenomenally fast. My income is growing faster. And so I have to increase my financial IQ, which means I need to learn language. I need to understand certain things. I'm on coaching calls and I've bought expensive training programs to learn things. John, so it's funny, like personal story is that a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, we were having a conversation with my corporate attorney, and we're doing this web conference on Zoom or whatever, and he's got his whiteboard, and he's drawn squares and triangles and lines and dotted lines, and then all these different entities and different languages and different words, and so. Again, it might sound kind of 202, but if you start making some decent money, there's ways to legally make sure that you pay less in taxes. And the bottom line is that your biggest expense in life is taxes. Whether you know that or not, you understand it or not, there's a reason why wealthy people get wealthier. And honestly, just bottom line is that they pay less in taxes. Now, if you're well, those rich, wealthy guys or whatever, look at, stop that thought process, stop that attitude and figure out why aren't you like them? Why aren't you doing what they're doing? They're not special. They're ordering their affairs in a way to pay as little in taxes. There's nothing wrong with that. And if you want to write a check, for more and you're really, philanthropic, I guess is the word, and you're really generous, hey, don't ruin the tax structure for me. Just go donate all your money. Okay. If you want to go fund every social welfare program, God bless. That's awesome. Good for you. They take enough out of my check and I'm not in the philanthropic phase of my life. I'll just say that. Right, John? So, I'm still trying to take care of me at this point. Well, let me ask you this. Maybe this might be a topical answer, but what's the difference between like you said, there's almost a couple different seasons or a lineage of that spectrum as you go through. Some people, they start with a TurboTax, and then they get an H&R Block, and then they get maybe a small town CPA, and then they get maybe a bigger firm. Doesn't always mean better, but there's definitely better CPAs out there for sure than others. I'll tell you straight up. I used to do my own taxes a decade ago. Then I enrolled a small town CPA, and he was fine, but he wasn't very aggressive. He didn't really understand my industry, my niche, what I was doing. He was, an older guy, very old school. And we filed my taxes. We did the deal, but there was no conversation about tax strategy or wealth strategy. And so, continue if you don't mind, just piggybacking off of what you said about when should you start getting a CPA? Is there a difference in these three different options of doing it on your own, a small CPA, and an H&R Block? Good or better, pros and cons. If you can weigh in on that.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think regarding the do it yourself, that's that's something anybody can do. But again, you're not a specialist, in tax, let alone, you kind of mentioned it before, there's a niche, right? There's a if I'm a landscaper, I want to find a CPA who specializes in landscaping because, just based on my experience too, when I worked at a large company, what I specialized in was pharmaceutical clients. So in the pharmaceutical world, from a tax perspective, there's special deductions, special tax credits that are just made for that industry. And if you're not in that industry, you just wouldn't know. And that's the same thing for landscaping, farming, and construction, right? You really need to find a CPA who specializes in that niche.
Right.
And they're not always easy to find, but I think anytime you talk to a CPA, first question you would ask is, or first or second question is, what other landscaping clients do you have?
Right.
What are a couple of deductions that are unique to this industry? Are there any credits? Just ask basic questions like that. They don't have to be super in depth about, the tax code, but, do they have industry in this, do they have expertise in this industry? Because that's really what separates, a regular CPA, like you might have mentioned, to one that can really help you and be proactive and help your business grow from a tax perspective, but also from a finance and bookkeeping perspective as well, right? Finding the ones who specialize in that industry.
Can I weigh in? So a friend of mine, he made a really good analogy. He said, that's like going to see a doctor And you're like, well, my, I'm going to go see the doctor for an ear, nose, and throat doctor is different than a cardiovascular doctor, but you're like, well, I just need a doctor. No. Like, you need a specialist. Like, you need somebody that knows what your issues are, your problems are. And if you find a guy that does, I have all the lawn and landscape clients of North America, awesome. I don't know if that guy exists yet. But if you at least can find somebody who understands small business owners, entrepreneurs, the self-employed, maybe he's got some construction clients, some landscaping clients, and you run a maintenance company or a landscaping business. Well, he's got a construction, the biggest construction company in town. He does their books. At least that's a better start, but interview that CPA at least, right? Like you just said, have those conversations.
Definitely. Yeah. Interview, because of, the internet, you can look at, you don't need necessarily a CPA right in front of you, right? You can have a CPA in a different state if you really want.
Mine's in California, 100%.
Yeah, that's what I mean. From a CPA perspective, I would always recommend, try to find one that embraces technology. That not only help from a cost perspective, but they're up on what's kind of going on in the market. So find one that are really embracing technology, and also ones that write articles for trade journals or online publications. If they don't have any articles on a certain industry, to be honest, I just wouldn't go. They wouldn't be my top choice. If they're writing and they're proactive, they're proactive about the industry, that's a great sign. And then, from a, it always comes down to, how much should I pay for a CPA? And I think, there's different ways you can look at it, of course, but this is one part of your business that you don't necessarily want to find the lowest cost provider.
Not at all.
I think you have to find kind of a happy medium, somebody that you can trust for a reasonable price. If you were asking me about bookkeeping, for that one, it might be a little, maybe it's the lowest cost provider, right? Just trying to find something like that. But for taxes, because if you can find somebody who can be proactive about them, it's not necessarily finding the lowest cost, the one that's going to bring you the biggest value. And it might be somebody who just specializes in that industry.
That's huge. This is an oldie but a goodie. I've always heard that a good CPA will save you more than it costs. So
Definitely.
So it costs a lot of money for my big boy firm, and they're not a big boy firm. They're very, well, I'm not even gonna get into it. They're very good. And, but it cost me a chunk of money. In fact, my younger brother was going to use them. John, this is a funny story. My younger brother started up a small business, did it for about 6 months, was crushing it, but he just decided after it started to pick up some momentum, he kind of saw the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And he goes, actually, he's like, I'm done. He's like, I'm actually done with this business. He's like, I don't want to grow it. I don't want to get big in this industry.
Yeah.
And I commend him for at least knowing what he didn't want to do. But part of that whole process, he had a conversation, a Zoom, what do you call it? Like an interview conversation with my CPA to see if my brother was going to use my CPA. And so my CPA gives him this package and this, and tells him what it can do. And my brother, because I go, hey, how'd your phone call go? So this is in a group chat with me, my wife, him and his girl. And he goes, awesome, nicest guy you've ever met, da 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 da. He goes, yeah, but this basic thing that he wanted to do was about $5,000. I go, yeah. I said, that's a good start. That's what this and this. And he goes, $5,000. He goes, He goes, are you kidding me? He goes, I did, like you just said, like a H&R Block or a TurboTax. It was I think the state was free and the federal was $30 or vice versa. And he goes,
Yep.
He goes, $5,000. I go, yeah. I said, what's wrong with that? He goes, that's insane. I go, I don't know. I guess it's all perspective. I said, we changed a couple things around and I saved $15,000 last year. He's like, you saved $15,000? I go, yeah. He goes, well, how much did you pay in? I told him, because I'm very transparent with him, and it's my brother. And I told him, and he goes, well, how much did you make? And I told him, and he goes, with a K on the end of it? I go, yeah. And he goes, what the hell am I doing with my life? He was just so, but it's different levels, different perspective. And again, I haven't arrived. I tell you guys this story to be funny and to have, a joke here, but but when you're an employee making 50, 60, 70, 80 grand and you get W-2'd versus when you're a small business owner, bro, that's where the conversation starts. That's not where it finishes,
Yeah. And when you're a small business, I was thinking about this off the top of my head, because, when people, it's tax time and there's all these marketing employees around, you got your tax money now, buy a new car with it, or, X, Y, and Z. But, in reality, the money that you are getting back from the government, they essentially, it's your money. It's almost like you gave them an interest-free loan.
Right.
So from a small business perspective, it's actually really important to work with a CPA because they can help you understand how much you should be paying. So at the end of the year, it's not, if they're giving you money back, that means you did your taxes wrong. In some aspect.
100%.
Not wrong, but you estimated your taxes wrong. So working with somebody and understanding that is important as well.
Dude, so you're so right. So even 19, my new CPA firm, like he did my 18s, but again, I got with them in January because my old CPA actually fired me. He was like 70. He was quitting.
He fired you.
He let me go. Like he did this real 4-paragraph email, super nice, the most cordial email I've ever received about being fired. And I showed my wife. I go, I actually feel good about this, like that I got fired, like because he was so nice. But he was like, again, he was this like 65-year-old guy. He was retiring. He owns like 40 Little Caesar franchises, so he's made his money. And he was just done. He was like, I'm only doing like friends and family and W-2s. And then because of YouTube and all this other mess, we had like 15 1099s. He's like, I don't even know what you're doing anymore. I go, I don't even know what I'm doing. Okay. And so this conversation was getting more and more interesting. And so he just let me go. He's like, I think you're outgrowing what I want to do. And again, I knew he was retiring for about 2 years. And so it was just, it was just funny, like how that whole conversation broke down. But yeah, here's the deal. He did my my new guy did my 18s, but again, like we couldn't really have a strategy going backwards. You can't have a strategy going backwards. You can really only have one going forward. So in 2019, we've done a bunch of stuff. We're shifting a bunch of stuff. Like I had to change my mindset, my skill set. I had to change habits and different things that I do. And and sometimes it's just as simple as filing different ways and different styles and doing things a little different. Totally legal. Everything's totally something that you could implement yourself if you're listening to this, but you have to have those conversations and get intimate. Like I really, and maybe we can keep going down this rabbit hole here for another minute, but I had to get really intimate with my CPA about exactly how much I make, exactly where every purchase was, like how I made purchases, how
definitely.
It was such a pruning, like I felt like actually I'm literally like my arms are crossed as I do this, and I'm like kind of tense because I'm like, dude, there's like 4 people on this planet that know what I make, like my wife, my friend Mike, and then my CPA and my old CPA. And and dude, you get like really naked really quick, you know what I mean? And because I'm like, this guy's looking at everything I make and why I spend what I spend and why I don't have this left over. and he goes, why are you buying this and this? I go,
it's all the time you go to like Burger King and that
Chipotle
Chinese restaurant. Yeah, Chipotle. I see it on your Instagram all the time.
Well, my CPA was like, well, we need to do something about this food. I go, well, I'm not eating out less. He goes, no. He goes, that's fine. Yeah. He goes, we'll just figure out a way to. So one guy that we're looking to have on the show is a guy named Tom Wheelwright. He's actually the personal CPA for Robert Kiyosaki. And in fact, another episode here, this will probably be a part 2. We're looking to have Garrett Sutton, who is the corporate attorney that built my companies on the back end. So that is going to be a really, really good conversation. Those guys are mega famous and super successful guys. So if you guys are enjoying this episode, stick around for a part 2. It'll be with Garrett Sutton. But so any which way, one thing I wanted to just bring an analogy back to the forefront of our minds, Jon, is imagine you're going to go on a cross-country trip, and you're going from California to New York. And you're in California in your car, you're all loaded up, you're ready to roll, and you punch in the directions into your GPS, right? The address into your GPS. Mm-hmm. Well, that's January 1. And then what you do is you just start driving. You just drive and drive and drive and drive and drive. You don't even look at your phone or your GPS, but you just keep driving and driving and driving. You don't look at your phone at checkpoints. You don't look at your phone when you cross state lines or different highways. And then, 12 months goes by in this analogy and you're in Florida. And again, like you would never plan a trip only looking at your phone one time at your GPS. Right? Like,
so true.
You should. This is what I had to learn, dude. I'm being totally like candid and transparent. Like I didn't do this until about 2-3 years ago. Like I did that. And then I get to Florida and I go, wow, it's a lot hotter and there's not as many skyscrapers as I thought. And I'm like, why am I not in New York? Why? Because I didn't look at my GPS day to day. I mean, turn by turn by turn. And that's why at a minimum, you should be talking to your CPA quarterly. I mean, that's my suggestion, Jon. You can weigh in on that. But if you can do it monthly, it's going to cost you some money, but I promise you, you'll usually save more than it costs. Can you speak to that? Is that a good analogy? Does that help out?
Yeah, no, I think for most businesses, it's a quarterly activity. You think about remitting payments to your state taxing authority or even the IRS, right? That's a quarterly activity. So
100%.
Yeah, I don't think any more than a quarter.
Yeah, I like it. Well, let's do this. When we're talking about deductions, you're talking about credits. We're already kind of volleying to where this one's going to go. A really fun next topic, which is I want to talk about FuelCred. Like, this is your baby. This is something that you've took
my second baby.
Your second baby, yeah. Well, you've spent like the last decade, doing being an accountant, CPA. Huge plethora of knowledge in the finance world, and then you had this brainchild, you and some of your other co-founders, to create an app called FuelCred, right? So I really want to break this down because I think it can help a lot of folks save a lot of money in our niche, in our industry. We'll do a quick little plug, talk about it for 10 minutes because I think it's really valuable. We did some sponsored content to create a video on it on YouTube that was just super well received. So let's do this. Let's take a quick break. We'll hear from the announcements again, and I'm going to get a sip of water here, and we'll go right back down into the rabbit hole.
Are you looking to be more efficient, effective, safe, and profitable out in the field? Ballard Products has a full line of innovative products to help you in your everyday operations. From mower gear, trailer gear, backpack sprayers, equipment racks and storage, safety gear and equipment servicing products, and much, much more. We're sure you'll find something you can't live without. With over 30 years in the lawn care industry and 20 years selling great products, we're confident these products will meet the use and abuse of the everyday lawn pro. Jump on ballard-inc.com to check out the full line of gear, and be sure to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube as well. Keep grinding and be safe out there, friends.
Awesome. All right. I appreciate you guys that have been supporting Corey's business and Ballard Inc. And you guys have been using the Brian's10 coupon code to save money on those accessories as well. So thanks to those guys for sponsoring the show. So Jon, let's talk about FuelCred. This is something that give me the whole story, the whole lineage here, because this is a really cool product and service that you guys offer. You have a smartphone app. So let's talk about FuelCred for the next 5 or 10 minutes. And why don't you tell everybody, like, where did this even come from? How did you even get started with this app and this idea to help folks save some money in their business?
Yeah. So I mentioned it before. I grew up on a family farm in New Jersey, and my partner he grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, in a very similar industry. So we've always been part of what I would call a small business, and that is my passion, right? Small businesses. My father was, and I saw the struggles that he went through, just from a day-to-day perspective. So I always had a passion for how can I help a small business? And when you think about, America, the U.S., that is the lifeblood of businesses out there. Majority of them are just small mom and pop businesses, So I always had a passion for that. Fast forward, I went to a big firm and I became a CPA. And after that, those 5 years, I said, I really want to get back to what I'm passionate about, which was that small business. And during the time I was at my firm, I heard about this, at the time called the fuel tax credit. I had a couple clients claiming it. And I talked to my dad about it. Funny enough, my dad has an interesting story too. He was a CPA to start a long, long time ago. And then he went into shoes, shoes, and then he actually bought about a 50-acre farm in New Jersey with no experience of farming, and he grew that into probably one of the largest fresh cut flower businesses in the Northeast.
Wow.
Of course, with our family. So he had an interesting career path.
Nice.
He was an entrepreneur. Think about farming and landscaping. We're entrepreneurs at heart, right? That's part of the business. So
yeah.
Anyway, he knew about it, and I talked to him about it. And I said, wow, this is a great incentive for businesses out there. I wonder if they're claiming it. I was just poking around, me and my co-founder. And funny enough, the government, the Treasury Department, they actually produce a report every year of what they call the unfiled tax credits. And what came out in the report was, for this specific fuel tax credit, there was $1.6 billion of what they call unclaimed, right?
Okay.
So people aren't claiming these tax credits. So that's a huge number. And maybe to go back, I can explain, what it actually is. So, every time you go to the gas station, whether you're a business or, somebody like, anybody going to a gas station, there's a federal and state tax on that fuel. For gasoline, it's 18 cents on the federal level, and then for diesel is 24 cents, right? And there's tax on that, and that tax goes to what they call the Highway Trust Fund. So every time you and that supports our public infrastructure. So every time you see work on a major highway, that is supported by the fuel tax, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what the government says, and this is kind of where the incentive comes in, they say that if you buy that fuel, that taxable fuel, and you use it in a trader business for off-road purposes, you can get that money back.
Okay.
So when you think about, what does off-road mean? Trader business means you actually, you have to own a business.
Right.
But, what does off-road mean? That means, essentially you're using fuel in a machine or a piece of equipment that isn't using our public, roads or public highway.
Okay.
So, you think about the businesses out there that use that, the top three are farming. You think about all the, diesel they use and all this farming equipment, construction, for all their larger equipment. And then the biggest one is landscaping, lawnmowers, leaf blowers, I think there was an industry report done by John Deere, and it essentially said that fuel was the second biggest cost, right behind labor for landscaping businesses. And it's a huge issue, when fuel spikes up and down, and you can probably talk about this too, that impacts your bottom line, right?
Oh,
so fuel is a big concern.
100%. I remember when gas. I remember when gas was $4.20 a gallon. Like literally, I was like, "Oh my god!" And so we started a fuel surcharge on my clients. This was like in 08, 09, because it was like, dude, this is a runaway. It was a runaway freight train. And by the way, we're talking off-road fuel use. So this isn't the fuel you put in your truck. So just to reiterate, but this isn't the fuel you put in your truck. This is the fuel for your mowers, your trimmers, your blowers, all the stuff we put in our smaller gas cans. You're talking about, right?
Correct. Yeah. Off-road fuel. So depending how you kind of do your business, right? I think everybody kind of does it a little bit different with, filling up their cans, or they fill their cans up and they fill the truck up in separate transactions.
That's what I
do.
do.
Either way, it's like you said, right? It's the fuel you're using in off-road purposes in your equipment. So you're probably filling it up in your 5-gallon gas tanks.
Mm-hmm.
So, fast forward, right? That's the background on it. So we said, wow, people aren't claiming this, that 1.6 billion. So we said, why aren't people claiming this? And so essentially about a year and a half ago, we did a survey, 40 landscapers. So we found landscaping to be the biggest industry. And, you think about landscapers, just the industry itself, because I came from a big company, and a lot of the larger companies are already claiming this, right? They have accountants, they have CPAs, they know about it.
Mm-hmm.
But the landscaping industry, it's very fragmented. It's small, town-based landscapers, maybe 3 or 4 in a town that are helping them out. There's not really, regional-based landscaping firms. There are some out there, but, they're very small, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, it's coming up, hey, they're small, a lot of them don't have a CPA and accountant. Let's just do a survey and ask them if they're claiming or they know about this. So we did a survey of 40 landscapers, and I think 38 or 39 of them didn't even know about this.
Wow.
Not only did they not know about it, they didn't even know if they had a CPA, if the CPA knew about it. And they were like, wow, what, because this is real money back in your pocket. It is a tax credit, not a tax deduction. And we can get into that too, but this is real money back in your pocket. So, that was like the second revelation of, wow, they don't know about this either.
Right.
Either. And then, a couple of them let us go to their CPA and ask them, hey, are you claiming this for your client? Because some of them were able to show us their returns.
Mm-hmm.
These are family friends, and they weren't claiming it either because it's a specific form you have to claim it on.
Well,
and obviously they weren't too happy about us digging around and say, hey,
your CPA doesn't know what he's
claim
doing.
this. Yeah.
Well,
No, it's true.
So funny story, dude. Totally can relate to this because with my CPA, great guy. I mean, nicest guy ever. And he did a lot of topical stuff for my taxes, right? And one of the things he did was he always claimed this off-road fuel credit. So Form 4136, if I'm not mistaken, right? And
correct. Yep.
It's funny because that's actually that was the what should I say, the catalyst to you and I really building a friendship, because I get emails all day from people that want to sponsor content or sell me products, or I mean, dude, literally I get 5 emails a day from everybody. I mean, some of them are $billion companies, some of them from China and everywhere in between, right? And I'm like, I'm like the Warren Buffett right now. I'm like, no, like 99% no, because I'm like, dude, I don't want to sell out my audience. I don't want to sell out myself. Like, if it doesn't make sense and it's not actually helping people, I just don't have time for it, And so I'm like, no. And then I see FuelCred come in. It was your email, and I read it, and I'm like, oh, interesting. And you're like, yeah, I don't know if people know of this, but this is like what my app does. It helps people qualify for this off-road fuel credit. And you said form 4136, and you know how you skim emails, and my brain goes 4136. I'm like, I know that number. I know that form. I know that deduction or that credit. I go, that's something I already do. So I'm like, really? So I said, hey, give me a call. Let's talk. And so we did the sponsored content. But so the bottom line is like, I don't just do sponsored content to create sponsored content like on YouTube. Like if I don't do it or haven't done it for a while or used it, I'm not promoting it to you guys. And it's so funny because of my CPA did a lot of things right. He didn't do anything wrong. He just didn't go to that 202 and that 303 level for me with my tax strategy. But the one thing he definitely did was claim that fuel credit. So anyway, keep going, man. I'm sorry, but that's just,
I mean, that's good. Right. And that was great. It kind of pieced the whole puzzle together when I called you that one day, and you're like, hey, I actually claimed this. Let me go take a look at my form. And
100%,
you went to go find your form, but for you, right, you have a very, you have a tax accountant that's very progressive, right? But for the majority of the industry out there, when we were doing our survey, right, people just don't know about it.
Right.
And part of it was an educational thing, just learning about it. But the other part of it is, it's actually a little bit complicated. Not necessarily, the off-road part, tracking that is complicated. You have to keep receipts.
Right.
But it's also just having all the documentation and putting the whole puzzle together and putting it on the form, right? So, at that point we said, wow, this is a great opportunity. And this kind of goes back to my background and my other partner's background. We said, we always started out, we want to help small businesses and my dad was a farmer, and I said, this is a great opportunity to help small businesses. Of course, we want to make a business out of it, but
sure.
It was kind of like a no-brainer for us because we knew people weren't claiming it, and we're like, what can we do? And so, with my background, I said, why don't we just essentially put a CPA in an app, right? And so what FuelCred is, it automatically calculates your federal fuel tax credit. And it does everything for you. All you have to do is connect your business credit card. We categorize all your fuel transactions. We apply what I would call, our tax logic or our business logic on top of that. And then we put everything on the form for you. And what's great about it is when you produce the form, not only does it get sent to your email, but it also gets sent to your CPA, your CPA's email. So if you do have a CPA that you're engaged with, you can still send it to their email, because some CPAs actually charge a premium for this. There's some tax credits, right? They charge a premium for it. So this is still a good opportunity, if you're using a CPA, you can still use FuelCred, and you can send it directly to your CPA. So, I made it sound very simple, but that's really how, we wanted to make the app. It takes about 2 minutes to sign up.
Yeah.
Just connect your business credit card. We pull everything. There's a couple questions you have to ask about, a couple questions you ask about your business. And then we pretty much have a log of all your transactions and all your fuel transactions. And on average, we launched at the GIE Expo this past GIE Expo. And that's a separate conversation we have to talk about because that was my first time there. And that was like a crazy experience. I wish I knew you there because you could have gave me kind of a tour.
Yeah.
But I had a booth and I talked to everybody. And that kind of validated our business too because I talked to probably 100 people and I don't know, 90 of them didn't know about it. But that's a separate topic.
Yeah. 100%.
That was a great event.
GIE is a zoo. It's awesome. Well, with the fuel credit app, or with the FuelCred app, like I like the fact that it imports all of my fuel transactions, and then I personally sometimes I'm like, oh no, that one it might grab something that's not a fuel transaction, because that was for the truck and not the mower, so I can like modify it and change the different, what do you call that? Like I can change the status of it to like, no, that doesn't qualify. Like that's a
you can change it on road versus off road.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Inside the question, we have 3 or 4 questions, and that kind of helps dictate what your fuel tax credit will be. But besides the killer part of hey, you get your money back, and I'll kind of go into how it actually works. But what's really interesting for us, when we got feedback from the market was, hey, this is a great idea, but I also have no idea what I'm even spending in fuel, and that's your, think about it like from a benchmarking perspective, I don't even know how much I'm spending in fuel, which, that's probably a figure you want to know. So what we did in the app too is, we have a summary screen, but it also tells you your week by week fuel consumption. So it's telling you exactly how much fuel you're using every week. This is not just for off-road. This is the fuel you're using in your business every week.
Sure.
But it's also giving you the price per gallon in your zip code. And that might, for some people, they might have had just one gas station, but I found it really interesting because I could tell, the national, I could tell the average in my zip code, and I looked at my gas station down the street and it was like 10 cents more. So I was like, where is this cheaper gas? Just for
Sure.
myself. But, it's just giving you different metrics on your fuel consumption. And, that's, I think for some small businesses out there, that's hard to capture. But in terms of, a lot of the questions we get is how much does this cost, of course. But so the app is free to download. It's free to sign up. The only time we charge somebody is when you actually want to generate the form, right? And the form is the key, right? That's what you have to send to the government. And we only charge to generate the form. All the other features are enabled in there. And and for your listeners, we still have the promo code going.
Yeah.
It's Brian. It's not Brian 10 because we're giving 80% off.
Right.
So just like a little competition with your other sponsors.
Yeah, try to beat that, right?
Yeah. No, but it's so we still have that promo code going, and it's $14.99 for that yearly subscription. But again, we only charge you when you want to generate the form. So you can still download the app, log in everything, and take a look at your fuel transactions. But really the killer part is, we're only going to charge you when you're getting money back from the government.
That's really well, and that's in true CPA form. If you have a good financial services person, they should be able to save you or make you more than they cost, right? And is the promo code Brian or Brian with an S? So Brian's. I always forget.
I think it's just Brian.
Okay, so promo code Brian.
You know what? We have both promo codes up, so it's Brian or Brian.
Okay, cool. I think we did cover that just in case because everything else is Brian's with an S. And I'll make sure to leave the link for the app in the show notes. So if you guys want to download it, check it out. By the time this episode comes out, you can still use it to get that form filled out and submitted to you and your CPA for 2019. If you're listening to this later on, again, just something to track as you go through the rest of the season in 2020. It's funny. I think in the form I pulled out, I showed it on YouTube. It was like 137 or 170.
It was 2017.
I think it was my 2017 form. I literally pulled it out. I showed it on the internet. I tried to cover up everything. Hopefully I didn't flash my social security number out there, Jon. I was really concerned about that. I'm like, I looked at that document 5 times. I'm like, all right, I think I can put this up on the camera. And I did. And because again, dude, like people, man, I'm telling you, I try to have so much integrity with what we do and be honest with my audience. And so if I don't use it, I'm not promoting it. And so I put my actual form for my 17 taxes up there. Well, it's funny because like from 17 to 18, we grew by like 40-50%, and then my business grew again 18 to 19, and then 19 into now. So I actually punched in a couple of days ago my 20. What would it be, Jon? The 2019 transactions, and it was something like 400 some bucks that it was already projecting that I would save as a credit. So let me ask you this really important thing. This is a really important one that I want to get across is that there is a difference between deductions and credits. And I talk about this in my video. But if you can, from a accounting, CPA, very authoritative voice, what's the difference between a deduction and a credit? But then what does the credit mean for you on your taxes from FuelCred? How does that translate into actually free money?
Yeah. So, if you, the word tax deduction, that's just a number, because ultimately what you want to figure out is your tax liability. And to get to that number, right, you have to take your income, your taxable income, and then all your deductions, right? But the deduction is really, that's a pre-tax number.
Right.
And that gets your tax liability. A tax credit is what they call below the line, and that reduces your taxable, your tax liability.
Right.
So the fuel tax credit is a tax credit, but what's really interesting about it, and not to get too in depth about it, it's what they call a refundable tax credit. So in the world of tax credits, there's refundable and non-refundable.
Mm-hmm.
And if the government, let's just say your tax liability is 0, right? And you have the fuel tax credit, they will actually send you money back, right? That's what they call a refundable. Some of their other credits out there, I forget the child tax credit. They have different rules. But like that one, I think might be a non-refundable. Actually, I think that one is refundable too. But they have other tax credits out there, what they call non-refundable. So if the government doesn't owe you anything, they won't give you that money back for the tax credit. You might be able to carry forward to other years, but that's what's great about this. It's a tax credit, so it's a one-for-one reduction in your tax liability. And even if you don't owe any money, the IRS will send you back that a check for your fuel tax credit.
That's huge. So that's really, really good explanation. So just we're not going to go down the rabbit hole here, but you guys got to learn more about this stuff. If I learned a lot from the Kiyosaki books, and there's some really good written books that I did on my top 10 business books video I did on YouTube, where I linked all these right on Amazon. You can get these books for $10-12. They will save you and make you a ton. But yeah, like really simply, a deduction. Everybody's like, well, fuel tax, I get my deductions. I already deduct my fuel.
Or I take my gas deduction, right?
Yeah. Like, I already write off my receipts. Guys, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking in above that. We're talking in addition to, above and beyond. So like Jon said, you run your business, you do $100,000 gross, and then you write off, $40,000-$60,000 in equipment and this and that and fuel. Awesome. You have $40,000 left over. You get taxed on that $40,000, right? What Jon's talking about is after you've already written off everything and you've done the whole deal and your CPA's already, cooked the books, as they say, then let's say you have a $1,800 tax liability or $18,000 tax liability, whatever it is. Hopefully it's less. So what you're saying is that when you have a fuel credit of, $600, that comes right out of that $1,800 you would owe. So it's
Definitely.
This is not a tax deduction. Of course, take your tax deductions right off the fuel that you spend. Now, again, this is why you need a CPA, because how you write off your fuel for your truck might be different. You might write off actual line item expense for your vehicle, or you might write off mileage, right? So
definitely.
So that's why we always say, this is just hopefully some topical, FAQs that I know a lot of you guys wanted to know about, but this is why you have to have a conversation with a CPA. I know it kind of sounds mind-numbing. I know it kind of sounds overwhelming. You're like, dude, I just wanted to lay stripes and plant flowers. I'll be honest with you. That's how I started 10, 12 years ago. But I'll be totally honest with you too. So let me give you a quick little fun analogy. Jon, there's a board game called Catan. And
yeah.
Do you know Catan? Okay.
I know of it. Yeah.
So I love this game. My wife hates this game, right? She's like, it's strategy, it's thinking, it's this, that. She hates it. She has no part of it. And so I'm always like, when friends come over, I go, does anybody want to play Catan? I carry my board game out like a dork. And she's like, nobody wants to play your board game. And everybody's like, I'll play. And she's like, oh, I hate everybody, right? And so she has different style of games that she likes, and I like Catan. But anyway, it's funny because I'm always watching YouTube strategy videos on Catan. This sounds so bad right now. And you're like, where are you going with this, Brian? So I'm always watching Catan strategy videos and Catan frequently asked questions and player guides and all this stupid stuff about this because I'm so passionate about playing Catan. It's such a fun game. So I overly nerd out. Well, here's the deal. About 3 or 4 years ago, I was sticking my head in the sand, if you will, about taxes and how I structured my businesses, how I structured my life. And I just was I just ignored it. I'm like, you know what? This isn't fun. I don't want to do this. This is somebody else's, problem. Well, as your business grows and we started making more money and I'm paying more and more in taxes, April 15th, 16th, 17th, whatever it was last year, I wrote a check for a lot of money. That was in addition to me already paying quarterlies, and then I paid that 2019's quarterlies, right? So I wrote a check, 3 checks went out. I was so mad. I'm telling you, I'm physically mad right now. I wrote checks that I was like, dude, that's like a car. That's a car. And I was just so mad. So here's the deal. I said, no more. I became a junkie, the last 12, 18 months about tax strategy, webinars, live streams, YouTube videos, all this mess. I'm on coaching calls. My CPA was like, well, we make coaching calls available. Would you like to schedule, we got this package for, $2,500, but if you buy a year, we do it for $2,000. I'm like, no, that's a scam. I don't need to talk to you every month. And then after 6 months of this, I was like, dude, you're an idiot. You have no idea what you're talking about. And you have these professionals that are out there. And I'm like, what am I? So my wealth strategy session and this coaching call session, it was expensive, but dude, we've saved a gob, right? And so just going back to the Catan thing, I became obsessed and a nerd to learn about this stuff because it became a strategy. It became fun. It became like a game, and this is my money. Like, I'm just being honest.
Yeah,
like,
no, it's so true.
This is my actual physical money. Like, again, if you make $100,000 and you keep, 30, cool. If you make $100,000, you keep 70. Well, I'd like to make 100 and keep 70 or whatever. Okay. Mm-hmm. Like, the bottom line is that it's your money. Like, if you're listening to this, it's your money. And a lot of people know, Jon, I'm pretty conservative with politics and my business. Like, I'm not out there to pay for things that I don't agree on or want to fund. Like, this is my money. And if you're a business owner, like, you should want to keep as much of what you're making as possible. And if you disagree with me, that's totally fine. Just go write a check to the government for whatever you want to give them, because I don't think they'll ever turn down a check. So, but just don't let me, or don't affect my ability to, run my life as conservative as possible, to keep as much as I can to take care of my family. And so, does that kind of make sense? I don't know. That's just how I look at things.
No, it totally makes sense. And as a business grows, I still think there's a part of the market, a part as you're growing your business, you can definitely do your own taxes, and that's totally fine, because there's a lot of, trade journals out there, a lot of news articles, and some of the do-it-yourself software, TurboTax, it's pretty intuitive, right? They can help you out. But as you grow your business, you're having, more revenue, and those couple items I mentioned, hiring employees is probably, one of the biggest ones where you maybe want to start talking. That's probably the first step.
Mm-hmm.
It's just important, right? Because CPAs, they specialize in doing this stuff for you, and you hit it right on the head. Taxes are probably they are the biggest expense. If you think about what you pay, in your lifetime, taxes are it, right? So why not take advantage of and try to be proactive and pay less? Right? It just makes, it makes sense.
100%. Well, this is, I think this is a really good conversation. I think this will be a great resource. Hopefully, if this does anything, hopefully it just helps you guys start to think and maybe look at different things that you're ignoring. I know I did for a long time. Again, don't play defense with your finances. Don't play defense with your business, and don't, for the love of God, don't play defense with your tax strategy, because it's super huge. And there's very, very simple stuff that a mediocre CPA can do, let alone a good CPA can do to save you guys a ton of money. Of course, again, as we always do, put disclaimers out there. I'm not a financial consultant or advisor. so take it with a grain of salt with what we're saying. We're not giving professional advice here, but again, go find a professional, open up your books. I always say, like, there's such a lack of accountability in this world because of the internet. Nobody's accountable to anybody really in this anymore in this planet. Like, at best you got your wife, and at second best you got your pastor, and most people don't even do number two. Okay, so the third person you should really get accountable to, your CPA, your accountant. It sounds weird, but that's like the name is in the name. You know what I'm saying? Like, get accountable with them. Stop making excuses. Stop just pretending like the shoebox method is going to get you to where you need to go. And again, it takes time. You got to invest into this. Like, I always joke, Jon, like, and you've heard me say this one before, is that I became a landscaper, but what I didn't expect was for me to also become a meteorologist. Well, it's like, what do you mean? Well, just because I cut grass and I'm passionate about cutting grass, I needed to study the weather to know how to schedule jobs and work and plan ahead and be ahead of the curve. Well, just like I was really passionate about mowing grass and laying stripes, I didn't know I'd also have to become a business expert with having good tax strategy. And so same thing, learn about this stuff. Like, listen to podcasts, listen to other folks, ask your CPA if he's got training that you can get, schedule time on a Saturday, get intimate, I guess is what I'm trying to say, and build that relationship. So, any which way. So, Jon, super appreciate you, bro. Like, super appreciate you jumping on the podcast. You and I've actually been talking for about 2 hours now, which is just
I just realized that.
I always say it's a time warp when people call in, because it feels like 5 minutes. Hey, if you guys enjoyed this podcast, do me a big solid, do a 5-star review, hit 5 stars, leave us a couple of sentences if you guys enjoyed what Jon had to share as well. We really appreciate that feedback. Jon, let me ask you this: where can people learn more about you, learn more about FuelCred? Are you guys on Instagram or YouTube or a website, just so they can get more information and catch up with you?
Yeah, so the app it's an iOS app. We're currently working on Android, so anybody can download it in the Apple Store. You can go to fuelcred.com, and that has our FAQ. We went over a lot of questions here, but that has about 30 questions about FuelCred, about the fuel tax credit, and can really answer anything. We're also on Instagram as well. So, if you have any questions, just shoot us a message on there, and I'll definitely get back to you. I am the owner, so I kind of see everything, me and my partner. So, we are the faces behind the company.
I love it. And we'll definitely leave the FuelCred link in the description if you guys want to download it. Again, literally, I hate saying stuff like this because the internet is so full of this kind of stuff, but it's like literally you can't lose, and like it's free money. But really, I wouldn't promote it to you guys if it wasn't legit, if it wasn't real. Like I actually pulled out my form, like for real, and I put it on the internet to show everybody like my actual tax savings, which was a couple $100 from 2017. And in 2019, we should save like $400 with this credit, or get a credit back, I should say, which is really, really cool. So if you want to check out the app, it's literally super intuitive. It takes, seriously, 5 minutes to download. It pulls your credit card, bank info for your fuel transactions, real time. It's really, really slick. So we'll leave that in the show notes down below if you guys want to learn more. And then, John, what was the promo code again? Was it Brian? I think we said.
Yeah, Brian.
Okay, so promo code Brian, it's $14.99, I think, or $14.95 to get your form 4136 literally emailed to you and your CPA. Regularly, I think it's like $99, isn't it not? Like it's
correct. Yep. Yeah,
so,
usually $99.
So we're saving you guys money. We're making you guys money, which I really appreciate and enjoy. So, all right. Hey, John, just to be respectful of your time, your calendar, we're done. Appreciate you big time, brother. Thanks for jumping on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, guys. Well, cool. If you guys enjoyed this one, like I said, leave me that 5-star review. And guys, thanks so much for listening to the Fullerton Unfiltered podcast. We'll catch you guys on the next one.
Thanks for taking the time to listen to the Fullerton Unfiltered podcast with Brian Fullerton. We hope you enjoyed this production. If so, please consider leaving us a 5-star review for the show. While the techniques and ideas presented here are designed to help you grow a more successful and profitable business, no one can guarantee these results for you. We want to emphasize that entrepreneurship is not easy, and the ideas presented here are just the opinions of Brian Fullerton and his respective guests. No one can guarantee success for you. That being said, we hope the ideas presented here help you and motivate you to go on out there and crush it with your own business.
Fullerton Unfiltered podcast.
Thanks for listening, and we hope to see you on the next episode.